So welcome back to X-Files Revisited, and we're on to episode 4 of season 1, and that is Conduit. Now, Brian, is this a notable episode for the series or for the whole franchise?
It is notable in many respects, in the sense that a lot of the issues that are kind of dealt with in the show become the backbone of the show, i.e. Mulder's sister. That's the predominant focus here. But it's certainly not an episode that I think you're going to find in many X-Files fans' top 10 lists of season 1, never mind the whole series. It's a tricky one, this, and I think we'll get into it as we go along.
Personally, I had a couple of issues with this episode, and I'm starting to see a sort of habit or a reoccurring theme so far, whereas I like the ones with... I liked the first episode with the sort of murder mystery, what was happening to the girls who was doing it. I loved Squeeze. I thought that was excellent because it was a person doing it. It was kind of horror movie-ish. I wasn't overly keen on the second one because I felt it was a non-episode with the whole brainwashing. The character doesn't really take much from it, and then we get this one again with the aliens. And again, it's another episode that I feel is a nothing episode. You know, it's there for one reason and one reason only, to hammer home Mulder's sister. You know, they literally, you know, like, oh, it's been 5 minutes, quick, somebody drop in Mulder's sister yet again. And the story that's going on round about it is nothing. Nothing. They don't do anything to resolve anything. They don't investigate a mystery that needs solved because it solves itself, and it feels like that's there just to pad out the storyline, just to hammer home the whole Mulder sister thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't entirely agree with that. Just for the simple fact of the matter is, any scene in a film or a TV show should do one of two things, if not both. It should advance the story forward, or it should reveal something about a character that we didn't already know. And I'm okay with episodes like Deep Throat that don't... You know, you get to the end of it and we're not... Story-wise, we're not really any further than we were when we started it. But character-wise, we are. We've learnt something about the characters. So that for me is enough, because the episode has developed the character. Now, I think this one does do that with Mulder, and to quite an extent, the character of Ruby's mother, she kind of gets the main storyline in this that mirrors Mulder's story, I guess, and Mulder's sister's story. So to me, this is a character-driven episode, and I'm fine with that. I think you're right in the sense that by the time we get to the end of it, you know, they don't really solve the case, so to speak, or they kind of do, but it doesn't really matter because the truth isn't going to get out. You know, Ruby's mother clams up and decides not to speak out anymore, but that's her character's journey, and I think it says something about abductees. It says something about people who feel they've gone through something but aren't believed by society, outcasts, so to speak. So I'm good with that. Yeah, I do think this is a character-driven episode, but I think your ability to enjoy it, I guess, does hinge on the point you made a little earlier, which is how much do you feel that the character aspects are being hammered over your head? And I think clearly they do hammer it quite a bit, judging from your reaction.
Well, let's just start with the episode, then we'll see where it takes us. So the opening scene, we've got a camping scene, we've got the shaking RV, lights, aliens again, and Ruby, the sister, has vanished from outside, and it's quite a good scene because you don't actually see anything from outside of the RV, so you don't know what's going on. Again, you're led with it could be aliens. There could be some other reason behind it. You've got the hot door handle, which is a nice touch as well, and then you've got the young boy at the other side of the door just saying, "Ruby's gone."
Yeah, the one thing about this scene that kind of grates on me every time I see it is Darlene's reaction. So that's the mother, Ruby's mother, when she's shouting to the heavens, and it's like one of those cliched moments where she's just like, "Ruby, Ruby, Ruby," and like, you know, the camera pans up and she looks into the lens as it's going off into the heavens, and she's just like screaming. It's one of them scenes that kind of sends a shiver down my spine, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I'm not overly keen on this opening sequence. I like it in the sense of what it is doing, the intrigue that it sets up, but from a performance standpoint and from the way it's filmed, it feels a little bit on the nose.
We've got the theme music, and then we're on to Scully in an office having a superior, having a conversation with her that a superior shouldn't really have, to be fair, in my opinion. The guy's pretty much made his decision, and he's brought her in there to tell her that he's made his decision, and she's trying to talk him out of not refusing Mulder's request to make this into an actual X-File case.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it should be the other way round, doesn't it? It feels like Scully should be the one who has gone into his office to talk him round. So, from what I remember, he's the one who's called her in to say, justify Mulder's choices here. Whereas it should be more the case that actually he just denies Mulder the funds, so to speak, and then Scully goes in and says, you know, "Can I have a word? Look, I think there is something here. I think, you know," but it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. I didn't notice that actually until you said it. But yeah, you're right.
Pretty much. He's affording somebody the chance to argue a point before he's finalised his decision, but it's also kind of clunky as well, because he brings out this case that Scully's never heard of, and then he offers up the information about Mulder's sister, and this is the first of many times we hear about it. And you know, it was only a couple of episodes ago that we heard this story from Mulder himself, and now she's getting the transcript of the X-File that Mulder actually opened up, which is good. I don't mind this so much. I feel that that's enough information to keep it in the forefront of your memory. Yeah,
but it's like you kind of have to wonder what game Blevins is playing at this point, don't you? It's like, what are you doing? Are you trying to be a counsellor to Mulder? Are you trying to get Scully to be a counsellor to Mulder? It kind of feels like Blevins could possibly be looking out for Mulder in many ways, but obviously we know that not to be true, because he assigned Scully to the X-Files to debunk it. So yeah. It does feel like the character motivations are kind of all over the place in this scene. I just, for me, this is one of those Basil exposition scenes again. It's just it needed to be there in order to drive the story forward. But it's only now that you've just mentioned that, actually, that just doesn't ring true at all, does it, from a character standpoint?
No. But it could have been, with a small tweak, it could have been changed, like you said, to a much better sequence that would have tied together a wee bit more, you know, common sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you had it jump straight to like Mulder and Scully discussing the validity of the case, and it's like links to alien sightings years prior.
Yeah, so Mulder makes the link basically that this woman, who's, you know, she's basically appeared in a tabloid newspaper. This is Darlene talking about her daughter being abducted. It would seem just like a tabloid thing, if not for the fact that she was involved in a newspaper story a long time ago that wasn't just a tabloid case, but it was about UFO sightings and whatnot. And so he makes the link there. But again, would that really be enough to warrant?
Well, the problem I have with this scene is Scully holds up a magazine about was it the lizard baby, and she's like, you know, how does this one tabloid story have any more relevance than this tabloid story? And it seems like Mulder's argument is aha, 2 tabloid stories. You know, it just, you know, which is pretty much what he's saying when you break it down.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Oh man, yeah, it really does. It's. I think the key is more the point that actually the first tabloid story she was involved in had a lot more witnesses and kind of, I guess, a bit more validation because of the number of people that were involved. But no, I mean, and you're right, it is. That is essentially Mulder's argument. Look, 2 tabloid stories.
So, have you anything else to say about those scenes of that, Brian? Is that you? I won't be ripping every scene apart.
I've not got anything to say about those scenes, but I can already tell you that my original grade for this episode has already gone down somewhat. I came into this with a specific grade in mind, but we're only about 5-10 minutes into the episode already. It's lost points, let me tell you. But yeah, Mulder and Scully go to see Darlene Morris, and Mulder touches a photo of her daughter in a rather creepy fashion, I've got to say.
He certainly does.
Darlene,
and you can it does nicely cut to Scully almost profiling him for doing that kind of.
You're kind of like, I get it. I get this. This is what you talked about hammering the point home. We don't really need Scully to stroke the picture in that creepy fashion to make the connection between him and his sister. And because of stuff that comes... Well, I mean, we've already been handed the file by Blevins, so that's already there in the back of our minds. So to see Mulder caressing this photo is just, it's a bit over the top. And it just comes off as... a bit bizarre, really. But Darlene tells Scully about the look in her eye, and how she's seen that look in other people's eyes. And so make what you will of that moment.
Yeah, and then Mulder goes away to talk to
Kevin.
Mm-hmm. The little creepy kid.
Yeah. There's something off with this guy, isn't there? Definitely something.
Absolutely, and it's not just these dungarees. Probably the fact that he's sitting there writing binary code and watching static.
You know, as kids do. You know.
Yeah, and I'm watching this, obviously now 23 years removed, and I'm like, do people even know what static TV is? You know, let alone the size of the TV. You show this to somebody that's a teenager, and they'll not have a clue what that TV is and what the static is on
that
it.
TV is square. What's going on? The kids. Yeah, he's hard to warm to. It must be said. But yeah, Mulder takes a piece of this paper, doesn't he? He takes some of the ones and zeros that this kid's been doing, and he phones this guy called Danny. We never actually get to see Danny, but he is someone who is referenced a few times throughout the series. Mulder, a couple of times, a few times, is on the phone to Danny getting help. I think this was probably going to be a thing before they established the lone gunmen, which is 3 characters that come into it later. I think they probably realised that, you know what, we can't keep having Mulder phone this guy called Danny. We need some genuine characters that can help him, which probably led to the construction of the lone gunmen. But yeah, for now, he phones this guy called Danny to get some help with these ones and zeros.
Yeah, and then from that we move on to the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's just recounting this story. There's no evidence to prove the existence of aliens have abducted Ruby, type of thing, and he's kind of dismissive of Ruby as a person and the way she lives her life, I guess.
Yeah, he's quite judgmental, isn't he? I mean, and you can see that Mulder sees in this guy, I guess, a lot of the reaction that he's had over the years. So, people refer to him as spooky all the time, and just, we saw in the last episode the way people treat him, and I think he projects, I guess, the mistreatment he's had. He's projecting in this sheriff, although he doesn't have to project that much, because the sheriff does come off as a bit of a douche, really. He is really quick to judge. But then again, we don't know his history. We don't know Darlene's history and the stories that this guy maybe has had to deal with. So moving on from that, we get a friend, in inverted commas, inverted quotations I should say, of Ruby's, tells Mulder and Scully in a library that Ruby was supposed to meet this guy called Greg, and they wanted to run away because she was pregnant with his baby. Yeah,
and this is one of the most craziest scenes, I think, because initially you've got them stepping out of the sheriff's office, and they get the little note that's "I'm across the street, follow me." They've got this girl just standing staring at them across the street. And then they wander into a library that's pretty populated with people walking up and down the aisle they're in, watching them talk to some girl through a bookcase. It's just strange. And you've got to imagine these people in this busy library, which didn't look overly big, just going, look at these idiots.
I don't have much of a problem with the scene. I think it sets up some intrigue. There's something about this girl that is talking to them. I don't know what it... She reminds me of someone, and I don't know who it is. But the whole time I'm just watching her, I'm thinking, who is it you remind me of? Like a bigger name actress, but I just can't think who it is. But yeah, the scene just kind of serves to set up some intrigue and a little bit of a plot point that comes back later on.
Oh, absolutely. And then from there they go to a bar, and I seen the familiar fare of the barman, familiar face of the barman. I remember him from Ogre, from Revenge of the Nerds.
I've not seen Revenge of the Nerds.
Once you've seen that, you just can't take him serious in anything. And he's looking for Greg as well. He works with Greg, which is why the Mulder and Scully have went to the bar.
Yeah. And so he basically says to them, look, if you come across Greg, tell him he's fired, because he hasn't been in for days or whatever. But then
he's mysteriously missing.
Yeah, and he has a little... He's the one that basically points Mulder and Scully to Lake Okoboji, because his ear has been burnt off. And it looks pretty gnarly, it's got to be said. But yeah, it's just... I think what I like about these scenes is something akin to what you said last episode about seeing Mulder and Scully investigating, and I like that we're seeing them just go from person to person, questioning, get a little bit more tidbit that leads them on to their next bit. Now, I think we could have gotten to Lake Okoboji a lot sooner, really. We probably didn't even need this guy at the bar, but I do like... Yeah, I like that dynamic of seeing Mulder and Scully investigating.
I like this scene as well because you've got Mulder acting as though he doesn't believe in UFOs, and he's just nudging the guy a little bit, because he knows that, well, he knows as he is one, that these people tend to be sort of really strong in their belief of having seen, and he just gives the guy a little nudge so that the guy can show him the evidence of how he's seen. You know, it doesn't realise it's going to be a physical manifestation of that. It could have been like a story or anything, but he just knows how to nudges people into just telling them everything.
Well, he knows that these people just want to be heard. Above all else, people just they want people to listen to them. They want people to hear their stories. He's the same way. He's been shouting to the heavens for goodness knows how many years about his sister, about her abduction, and no one will listen. So like you say, he knows the mentality of these people because he is one of these people.
And then next we move on to the motel, where we've got the return of the Men in Black.
Yes. Long before the Men in Black movie, we had the Men in Black in the X-Files in 2 episodes now. They're NSA agents, so National Security Agency agents, and they...
No, I think I missed something here, because they've broken because Mulder has the binary code, the sheet with the binary code on it. Now, how did they get a hold of that?
Presumably through Danny. Not presumably. I think there's actually a reference dropped about because Mulder faxed the information to
right. So we're just assuming that the NSA are just monitoring everything.
Yeah. So they've monitored that fax and found that code, and it's tripped a few alarms.
Right. Okay.
But I love. Again, Mulder's just not intimidated. We've seen this time and time again, and he's just like he should be handing everything over right now. He should be like cacking himself, but he's basically giving the finger to the NSA. It's like, sorry guys, I don't know what to tell you. But this is a bit of a low point for Scully, because she's the one who gives up the kid. She tells them where Mulder got the ones and zeros from. I'm not sure if I buy that behaviour from Mulder, given what we've seen from her, particularly in the last episode, the amount that she kind of stuck up for Mulder. But then again, I guess she's just following protocol. These guys are the NSA. She's doing her duty, I guess.
And then you've got the Men in Black taking Kevin away. And Mulder's just kind of pottering about the house or the outskirts of the house, and he climbs up to the top of the RV to see that it's all charred.
Yeah, I mean, the NSA agents take Kevin, obviously, because these ones and zeros turn out to be a security satellite transmission. So, it's very, government sensitive, so to speak. So why is this kid getting security satellite transmissions through his television? But like you say, Mulder does a little bit of nosing around and notices that the caravan was... the top of it has basically been burnt to a crisp. And this comes from, obviously, the abduction that we saw at the beginning of the episode. It also begs the question as to why they didn't check this out a little bit earlier, because they did question Darlene.
Well, it comes into play later on when you get to Lake Okoboji and there's no charred ground anywhere. You know, anything that burns the roof of an RV surely going to burn grass, soil. It does seem to turn some of the sand into glass, but
there seems to be a lot of plotting. I think the plotting on this episode is quite dense. There seems to be a lot of stuff, like information, just constantly being fed out. And I think as a result it can make the episode feel quite expositional. Yeah,
and then we get that sort of moment in the series, the episode where we realise that we haven't heard about Mulder's sister in a little while. So during the car ride, Mulder says his theory about Kevin. He believes he's a conduit for something or other, and Scully just gives a similar speech that she said before about Mulder's sister. You know, you're projecting, it's all about your sister, you need to let this go, not everything ties into your sister, sister.
I didn't have a problem with this. I think had we done without the scene in which Mulder caressed that photo, I think this scene probably wouldn't feel as heavy-handed.
I can't remember the dialogue off the top of my head, but there's a couple of things that Scully says that feels clunky. It doesn't feel true to the sort of character. I wish I had the examples just now, but there was a couple of things that struck me as just sort of cardboardy about what she was saying there. And I think that's what sort of annoyed me more than anything. Again, if it was done in a better way, I may have been a little bit more forgiving about it.
Yeah. So Darlene obviously gets released from custody. Kevin's released because of these ones and zeros. And Darlene tells Mulder to stay away from her family because obviously she feels a bit betrayed. That's mainly because Scully led the NSA to her house, but she kind of blames them for that. And this is the point where actually she's changed her mind. She doesn't want to talk to these guys anymore. She just wants them gone.
And then we end up at Lake Okoboji.
So just before we get to Lake Okoboji, we have a scene. It's a car ride with Mulder and Scully, and basically, obviously, because Scully is the scientist, she's the one who's always trying to explain things. She says to Mulder that the agent who had investigated the ones and zeros basically told them that the ones and zeros were a statistical aberration. This is basically her best explanation that she's got to explaining why this kid would write out the exact same pattern as what the NSA agents have for the satellite stuff. It doesn't necessarily explain what a kid of his age would be doing, staring at a TV screen and writing down ones and zeros. But statistical anomaly is the most, I guess, the weakest argument we've heard from Scully so far for any of the things they've tried to explain. And even she, I think, smells her own BS on that one. She kind of gives a look to Mulder after she said it that kind of makes you think, she can't.
You're reaching.
Yeah, she can't even convince herself on this one. So,
about to prove myself wrong, I said there was no other sort of fire damage at the lake, but there was. The tree line was burnt.
Yes, yeah.
From extreme heat, which Scully again tries to rationalise as an electrical storm.
Scully seems really weak in this episode, to be honest.
Yeah.
Coming off the back of Squeeze, in which it was a really strong episode for her. Her character was like, like we said, the smartest one in the room. In this one, she seems to be like the dumbest one in the room.
I think that's probably why the sister gets brought up a lot, because it's like a touching point. She'll be like, it's a statistical anomaly. Mulder will go, really? And he'll be like, oh, remember your sister, Mulder, come on. Never mind. It's an electrical storm, really? Yeah, your sister, come on, your sister got abducted here. It's like a diversion tactic.
Yeah, so while at Lake Okoboji, we find Greg. Basically, Mulder and Scully find this shallow grave because it's a wolf. Yeah, because they're led there by a wolf.
Yeah.
Make of that what you will. They find a shallow grave and it's got Greg's body in there. So this is the guy that Ruby was apparently going to run away with.
And you've got Mulder's compulsive nature coming out here. He's an extremely smart man. It's proven that, and he knows, or he should know, not to touch the site. But he can't help himself. He has to start digging through to see if Ruby's going to be there. He needs to know. He can't wait, and it takes Scully to hold him back almost.
Yeah, it's an obsession, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
He's not looking for Ruby when he's digging up that grave. He's looking for his sister.
Oh God, I wish he'd found her.
That's at the end of the series, right there. I'm glad he didn't then. But yeah, this does set up an interesting conceit, really, which is that actually, has Ruby been abducted, or is she behind a lot of this? Does this have nothing to do with aliens? And in my mind, it kind of makes me think back to a lot of what the sheriff had said earlier, which is that Ruby is. a manipulator, I guess, and it kind of calls into question. Well, actually, is she using her mum's stories to basically pull the wool over people's eyes and to get away with murder, essentially?
Yeah.
So that was an interesting conceit for me in the episode as to where it was going.
Mm-hmm. And then we move on to Tessa's interrogation.
Yeah, so Tessa's the girl that we met in the library. She was the one who said that Ruby was going to be running away with Greg. And it actually turns out that she was the one who was going to be running away with Greg, because they learned from some doctor's reports that she'd had an abortion or lost a baby or something. So it was actually her that Greg had gotten pregnant. So it looks basically very quickly. Any doubts over Ruby being the one who'd killed Greg are kind of brushed aside. We learn quite quickly that Tessa is the one who's done it. She's the one who had a beef with Greg and with Ruby.
Yeah, and they've kind of solved that the murder of Greg, which they didn't really know they had until the previous scene.
Yeah. So the real question now is, what's happened to Ruby? Has Tessa killed her, or did she get abducted by aliens?
I'm actually looking at my notes here. Now, I'm sure that Mulder and Scully speak outside of the interrogation room, but my note just reads, "Sister again!" ! Scully seems to be really hammering this one home.
Yeah. Well, this is the point where Scully tells Mulder to stop looking. It won't bring back your sister.
Yeah.
She at this point she thinks they've solved it. She's happy to say that Tessa has killed Ruby. She's clearly out there somewhere, probably buried, like Greg. So as far as they're concerned, this case is over. They should go home. Mulder isn't willing to call it quits just yet, and that's when she says, "Look, stop looking. It won't bring back your sister."
And the next scene is at Kevin's house.
Yeah, they get there. Not really sure why. I think Mulder goes because he wants to have a final word with Darlene.
Right. I thought I'd missed something here.
Yeah.
She kind of hope you're going to enlighten me, but
no, they go because I seem to recall Scully saying she won't speak to you, but Mulder says he's got to try, and I can't remember why exactly, but it's off. I think it's off the back of something that Tessa had said.
So they get to the house and nobody's there.
Yeah, there's no one there. This is a problem I have. There's one of these pictures. Basically, a load of A4 sheets of paper have been kind of stuck together with all these ones and zeros. Mulder's looking at it. He doesn't know what it means. And it's only when Scully gets to the top of the stairs that they look down and see that it's a picture of...
It's a giant art attack.
Yeah, you kind of expect Neil Buchanan to be looking up at the camera going, "This is Art Attack." But yeah, it is a giant art attack. But it really begs the question, how the hell did Mulder not see it sat on the couch? Why did they need to be stood at the top of the stairs in order to see this picture of quite frankly, what looks like Laura Palmer from Twin Peaks? It kind of stinks. You're thinking, even at ground level, you would see what this is a picture of. It's an excuse to get like a nice little reveal in there, but it doesn't really ring true. You kind of look at it and think, come on, Mulder, you'd have seen that. You're telling me you wouldn't have seen that sat on the couch? Not buying it.
But in the context of the story itself as well, every other binary code that the kid has got has been information about something or other. It leads to physical information, whether it be music, a soundbite, part of a Bible or a Quran or something like that. Yeah, and this time he's just drew a big picture. It just seems strange.
It's so deadpan.
Yeah, and there's no way the mum's putting this in the fridge. It's just too big to go in there.
Yeah, oh man, good grief. This episode gets more ridiculous the more we discuss it. I've always had trouble enjoying this episode, but this time around, because I was trying to analyse it, I don't know, I obviously didn't analyse it enough. I enjoyed it to an extent. There's still something about it I couldn't put my finger on. It's not one of those episodes that I enjoy revisiting. I kind of skip over it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just discussing it here, it's not good, is it? It's not a good episode.
It's not the best one.
And you kind of feel like a lot of the stuff they're dealing with regards to Mulder's sister, they did kind of deal with it in the pilot anyway. So
yeah, that's the thing. I feel that they mention it in the pilot and they mention it at the start of this episode, which is fine for a refresh, but they continually hammer it home, and everything. This full episode is all about Mulder's sister, whether it be the mirroring storyline of Ruby disappearing, or the fact that it's just constantly brought up in say imagery, or Scully mentioning it. It's just all about that, and understandably for you've seen the entire series, so it probably plays better for you. I'd never get further than the third or fourth season, so I don't know the overreaching implications of this episode later on.
Yeah, I honestly don't think there are any. Now that we're talking about it, and I'm thinking about what we actually learn with regards to Mulder and his sister, I don't think we're given any new information that we weren't given in the pilot episode when Mulder told the story of his sister being abducted. And rather bizarrely as well, I mean, I'm jumping ahead here right to the end, the final scene in which we see Mulder in a church, that doesn't ring true either with regards to Mulder's character, because he's not the religious one. Scully is. Mulder shouldn't be sobbing his heart out in a church as though he's in confessional. It doesn't ring true for his character based on what we see later on in the series.
They're in the car, they're looking for Kevin and Darlene, and they find the RV outside the woods, and they find a trail that leads to Kevin walking in the woods towards a super bright light.
Yeah, again, this gives me, this is a callback to the pilot again. Is that as soon as I saw this, I thought this is just like the scene in the pilot episode when the sheriff comes with his car and he's got those bright lights, and you think, oh, it's a UFO, and then we cut to break. And then, we come back from the break and it's just a reveal that actually it's not a UFO, it's a bunch of bikers. And it's really flat. It leaves you feeling really flat and disappointed, I feel. And
I think part of the reason is, for me, was the initial light that he's walking towards is red. It's a bright red light coming from behind the trees, and then suddenly it turns to just clear headlights and... in the pilot it was a white light, and it turned out to be headlamps again. But that's fair enough. But this one was red for some reason, which leads it to believe that it's going to be something strange.
Yeah, for me as well, the thing is that this kid doesn't lead us to his sister. In fact, he doesn't lead us anywhere. He's just heading towards a bunch of bikers. And it's Scully and Kevin's mum, Darlene, that find the sister, that find Ruby. So it's almost by chance, really, complete chance, that they stumble across Ruby in the forest. Whereas I kind of feel like it was Kevin who was supposed to be leading us there. It should have been Kevin that found the sister.
Absolutely, and then to go back to the motorbikes as well, it's like, the countryside at night is extremely quiet, and a motorbike isn't exactly the most quietest thing you've heard on the planet, and things, there's trees about, so you're going to get an echo off that, and you've not got just one motorbike, you've got at least 20 odd there, and yet they're surprised that all of a sudden these bikes are just on top of them.
Yeah. Oh dear. So Ruby's found in the woods, I personally think it should have been Kevin that led them there. Otherwise,
but they don't even show you Ruby being found. It just cuts to Scully shouting on Mulder and administering CPR.
But you kind of think, what was the point of all the ones and zeros? What was the point of Kevin being this conduit, as Mulder puts it, if he's not the one who finds the sister? It's like, you kind of feel like the aliens should be saying, yeah, we're finished with your sister, you can have her back. And that's why this boy is getting this information, and he leads them to the sister, but he doesn't. He just wanders in the woods and stumbles across some bikes, and then then Scully and the mother stumble across the sister. But anyway, it's just from there. From there we go to the hospital. So Ruby's in a bed, and Mulder basically wants to get her to go on record, to tell her story, and Darlene again shouts him down, doesn't want anything to do with it. And for me, actually, this was a nice moment. I enjoyed this moment because it talks about two different kinds of people, and Mulder is one and she is another. And also, given that she is much older than Mulder, there's a sense of where Mulder might end up, which is that, yeah, you know what? Enough's enough. You can spend your whole life shouting at the heavens and trying to get people to listen to your story, but sooner or later you're either going to end up in an institution somewhere, or you're just simply going to give up the ghost. You're going to be like Darlene. You're going to say, enough's enough. I just want to live a quiet life. Just leave me alone. And Mulder's not like that. He's still young. He's still fervent. He's still, he seeks the truth religiously. But there's no guarantee he's going to remain that way.
Another thing at the end of this is he never gets the confirmation from Ruby either. He just wants to hear her say that there's aliens, just even if it's not on record or to anything else, just personally, just to get that affirmation that it's all real.
Yeah.
You still get that sign, like, as much as he believes, he needs that tangible proof, which he doesn't quite get. And another thing about Kevin as well, Kevin's conduit abilities are never addressed again after his giant heart attack. It just, you don't know if this boy's still in contact, still doing things like that. It's just forgotten about. Almost.
It's just done, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a thread that we don't get to see again. And then we've got the scene of, well, you've mentioned the church scene.
Yeah.
Already. Then
So this is Scully listening to the tapes, the hypnosis tapes that Mulder went under. And, we've spoken about this before, again, I think from the pilot episode, with regards to, can the hypnosis be trusted? Is the stories of Mulder's sister trustworthy? Or has it all been born out of hypnosis? Because he wants to believe, as the final line of the episode is. That's an interesting line, actually, because it becomes something of a slogan for X-Files fans in many ways. This idea, that I want to believe. This is something Mulder says here, and it's actually the title of the second movie as well. So yeah, that's it, really.
Yeah. Overall, this has been my least favourite of the 4 episodes I've watched. I feel that it hammers home a point that was made within one very clear, concise scene in the pilot, which is all about Mulder's sister. It doesn't really push Scully forward any. In fact, she seems to be kind of sidelined in this full episode, which is disappointing. And the actual story within it about Ruby is inconsequential, and there's certain parts that are forgotten about. So I don't feel it's like a fully thought out episode, and I don't think it's one that I would actually go back to revisit again. I was happy watching it. When I thought about it, there was bits I really didn't like, I really wasn't keen on, and overall I think I'm going to give it 2 out of 5.
Yeah, it's before we did this discussion, I was looking at a 3.5 out of 5. Now I'm with you. It's a 2. I give this a 2. I think. I think that there are moments in this episode that betray the characters. Just seeing Mulder in a church doesn't ring true to me at all. Given the characters and like much later in the series, like right near the end of the series, we do see Mulder kind of coming around to ideas of faith, of I mean, it's way down the line when we'll get there, but certainly not here. Not at this point. No way at this point should we be seeing Mulder in a church. But Scully, you said she kind of gets sidelined in this character, in this episode, and that her character doesn't develop. I'd go further than that and say that she actually backslides in this character, in this episode. Her character, it's like in Squeeze was one step forward, this is 2 steps back. She doesn't do anything really of any particular worth in this episode. I do like, except for the performance in the introduction of the episode, I do like the character of Darlene. I like her progression, so to speak, her character arc, and I like her final words to Mulder, and what that shows us. And again, that's why, on many levels, I don't necessarily agree with you in the sense that the case is inconsequential. The consequence comes out of the character, not necessarily the events, but what happens with this character and her outlook on life. The fact that she has gone from this woman who does want to tell her story to a woman who is actually, my story has caused me nothing but pain, and I'm quite happy to just go on living my life, never telling it again. So for me, that is where the consequence of this episode lies. It lies in her character. But is that enough to make me want to see it again? No. I'll give this episode a 2. I don't think it's as vital as maybe some people might want to believe. No pun intended. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that one.
Yeah, and up next is episode 5, which is Jersey Devil, which is one that I'm pretty sure I have some memory of. If I remember correctly, it's about some kind of modern day Neanderthal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not an episode that is particularly loved amongst most X-Files fans.
But for some reason it's in my memory banks. So
yeah.
I'm not too sure why, but we'll get to that.